Welcome to Whistleblowers in partnership with Wix Trade Pro. Welcome to Whistleblowers, the podcast. Today with Ian Ladyman and Mark Clattenburg in different parts of America. Gordon Smart here doing the podcast today from Surrey. And I am in a really miserable, really frustrated, disappointed, dejected mood because last night, as we record this, Scotland succumbed to a painful and calamitous defeat to Brazil, as everybody will be aware. And I think I'm just going to start the podcast by just saying how frustrating it is to be a Scotland fan. That's two tournaments back to back where the Tartan Army have brought the noise, brought the personality, given the team everything, and in exchange we've seen pretty disappointing performances. Big players didn't turn up, appalling mistakes at that level, real schoolboy stuff. And when your captain's trying to play a 6-yard pass inside his 18-yard box and giving it away, you can't afford to do that at international level, and we were punished. Worst of all, though, there was nothing to cheer. There was no goal, there was no great performance, there's no historic moment, there's no Archie Gemmill in 78, there's not a great goal to add to those amazing goals that got us through against Denmark. And I think there's a lot of disappointed punters who have remortgaged their homes, spent a fortune to get out there and see it, and are left once again scratching their heads with a manager who's walked off from interviews after the game, which, in my opinion, isn't acceptable. You shouldn't be storming off. It's disappointing for everybody, but at least you can do is stand there with people who you have a good relationship with, face up those questions and answer them properly. That's the least you can do in defeat. So all in all, boys, I'm really, really hacked off. Mark and I were having a bit of chat during the game last night. There's a number of things to get into, but first of all, Ian, what are your thoughts as an English-based football reporter who's familiar with a lot of the players that were playing last night? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I watched it in a bar down the road from where I'm staying in New Jersey, and it was full of Brazilians, Brazilian families, really. A few Scots around. One Scottish girl walked out after that second goal that was eventually disallowed. Somebody had to go and get her and bring her back in. Although sadly for her, there were 2 more goals for real after that. Look, you're right about Steve Clarke. I don't know what he's been so moody about. I've spent a little bit of time with the Scottish media. I was in the same hotel as them in Boston before the game against Morocco, and I can tell you that every single one of them, including the BBC, are absolutely invested in Scotland being successful. And they all recognise that this has been a tough gig for Scotland, a tough draw for Scotland, and they try to give them the leeway that they want to give them. Ultimately, they've got to report on what they see. And Steve Clarke absolutely should really try and be a little bit, I don't want to say professional, because I know that there's an awful lot of disappointment after games, but he's just got to be a bit of a bigger boy about that and stand there and face the questions. In terms of the game, look, I understand the disappointment. Of course I do. It's like when your team gets to a cup final, FA Cup final, Scottish Cup final, and you imagine being at Wembley or Hampden, don't you? And you imagine the feeling when a goal goes in and what it'll be like. And when you travel to a World Cup and you don't get that, and you don't really get anything to get you off your seat, there is that sense of disappointment. However, I think and I'm absolutely not being deliberately rude. I think we all have to understand that Scotland they're just not a very good football team. That we've talked before about a lack of depth. We've talked before about problems at centre forward. We've talked before about how many of their good players would get into other teams. If you'd have said to me that Scotland were going to come out here, win the first game, and then get into the final game against Brazil with something to play for, I would have said that was quite acceptable. They're playing Brazil. They lost 3-0. I would say in terms of the standards of the 2 players on either side, that's kind of what you would expect. You don't expect self-harm for the opening goal. I absolutely understand that. There was a whiff of self-harm about the opening goal that they conceded against Morocco as well. I understand why that's frustrating. But I don't think it was as bad as Germany. Germany felt like surrender as soon as they got to the Euros and lost the first game 4-0. Look, they've given this a go. But the fact is that they had 2 shots on target against Haiti in the first game. The second one went in via 2 deflections. They didn't manage to have another shot on target in the whole tournament until the second half last night. And that is pretty much where Scotland are, I'm afraid. They just don't have good enough players.
Yeah, McTominay's goal was deflected against Switzerland as well, wasn't it? It wasn't exactly another clean goal. So actually, if you look at the major tournaments that Stevie Clarke's qualified for, the record's abysmal. Mark, what are your thoughts on it?
I tell you what, if the team matched the supporters, I think they would win the World Cup. I think the supporters were unbelievable. I think one of the, I turn up the national anthem every time when I'm commentating on the games because it puts the hairs on the back of my neck. I think it's incredible. And if players can't get up for that, then something's wrong. And I agree with Ian. I think it just lacks quality. And when you're playing one of the best teams in the world, or so-called best teams in the world, you can't gift things. And it was amazing when I was messaging you last night, Gordon, and after the first mistake and then again another mistake, and you're thinking, if Scotland can stay in this game as long as possible, there might be a little sniff, but then conceding a goal just before half time just kills the game. And I agree with Ian to a point where Scotland haven't got enough quality. They've got some good players who I don't believe have turned up in this tournament. I think, there's been some good performances from players that I didn't expect. But in reality, I thought, you expect more from your senior players, and I just didn't think that happened, and it didn't really influence any of the games. Haiti, you win 1-0, but the rest, I thought, in general, it's been poor, and you're gifting goals away, and I felt when you're gifting goals away against Brazil, you're not going to win, are you?
Yeah.
But then I felt, I don't know how Ian felt watching it, but me commentating on it, it felt like Scotland were expecting to lose, but they were just trying to limit the damage. And it felt when they went 3-0, they thought they need to get a goal and they tried to push a little bit. But you can't go into a game thinking, well, I'm just going to lose and try and hold on and hopefully go through on a third place because of goal difference. I think that's a dangerous game to play.
I think psychologically it was a very difficult game for Scotland. I wrote this after the second game. Going into a game knowing that a 1-0 defeat may get you through is a very, very difficult way to approach a game. I also feel that if you go there and go toe to toe with players like Bruno Guimaraes and Luca Paqueta and Vinny Jr., then you're absolutely going to get picked off. The way for Scotland to go about it was to try and stay in the game. So I don't blame them for going that way. But of course, all that goes up in smoke when you give the opposition a goal after 5 minutes. And in terms of senior players, Mark, the better players, you can't carry a team on your own. You certainly can't carry a team on your own when you're playing in an environment where the real field temperature is 98 degrees. You just can't do that. And I'm afraid that Scotland have finished where I would have expected them to finish. They were the third best team in the group and they finished third. I think that's appropriate to where they are in standing. Interesting what you say about the anthem, Mark, Flower of Scotland. It's an absolutely wonderful thing. It really is. I was out for a walk in New Jersey last night, walked down to the river after the Brazil game, the Scotland game. I was walking back, I bumped into a group of guys from the BBC. I bumped into Guy Mowbray, one of BBC's commentators, and Steve Crossman works for Five Live. And we were talking about the anthems and how Scotland's anthem is so inclusive and how it's a wonderful thing to witness. I don't know how many people the Scots were there, say there were 20,000 there, all singing it, all utterly moved by it. And we were saying that it's a shame that we don't quite have, we have a slightly different type of anthem, let's say, without getting into nitty-gritty of it. We just have a different kind of anthem that doesn't quite do the same. If we don't hear the Scottish anthem again, if they do go home, we will miss it. And America will miss the Scottish supporters. I think there's something to take from that as a nation. If you come to America and leave a mark the way that the Scottish people have left a mark, I think there's something to be some consolation to take from that.
There's a dissonance here for me though that I find really frustrating, and I wrestle with this because I am so proud to be part of the Tartan Army and turn up and represent Scotland in the way we do. It's a magical thing to be a part of, but it's also slightly humbling and humiliating afterwards when you've put on a show like that. It is the famous line from Braveheart, well, we didn't get dressed up for nothing. To see that performance last night, it just didn't match it. And my issues are very simple issues. Steve Clarke didn't make a change until the 82nd minute. And if we look across the board and see what Thomas Tuchel did, in that game the other day, where he made 4 substitutions and it completely changed the momentum of the game. You know, he made a forced substitution because Andy Robertson had an issue, right? Kieran Tierney was brilliant when he came on, actually, and that was frustrating for me. You have to have your best player start in the game. And again, you know, if you're only making changes in the 82nd minute and it hasn't been working, that doesn't make sense to me. Just and the Tartan Army are screaming out to have a go. You're playing one striker up front. I don't know. I mean, I totally understand that you got to be careful you don't leave yourself open to creative genius. Well, you know, even Cunha, what a player he is on the ball. But at the same time, for me, you know, just have a go. You know, Ben Gannon Doak, every time that he's electric. And I thought he looked like he could create something last night. But it's just that embarrassment now of, oh, well, we turned up and had a great party, but we were shite. And that's the Roy Keane issue, isn't it, with Ireland? It's not about that. Scotland have to be more ambitious with the players that are interested in the game. Compare us to Norway, for instance. Look what they are doing compared to us. We should be batting above what we are.
What's your view on the Steve Clarke contract? So he was given a new contract before the tournament. He's now contracted to 2030, so through to the next World Cup. That's quite a commitment, I think. But I'd be interested in the general view on that.
We've talked about this a lot, actually, amongst our group of mates who follow Scotland, and I really like the idea and principle of removing that conversation from the whole tournament. It's like you don't want every press conference to be peppered with, are you staying, are you going? Because it would have dominated the conversation.
Yeah.
However, you know, he's done a brilliant job. It cannot be argued with, getting us qualified after a really barren couple of decades. So he deserves credit for that. But there is some kind of nosebleed, some kind of mental block when it comes to tournament football. You can't argue with it. You know, 3 times now on the bounce we haven't delivered on the big stage. So, you know, is it time for a change? I think it is. I really think it is. And also, you know, Stevie Clarke, I like the guy. I can cope with that sort of doer, sort of pragmatic, stoic style. But I do feel envious of Thomas Tuchel and his candour, his leadership, his management, his flexibility, his professorial strategy. You know, he seems to be a cut above what we have, and I think it's time for a change.
Though but also he's dealing with a group of players who are cut above what you have. I'd be interested to see what Tuchel is like if and when he comes under real pressure, because he hasn't had that yet. You know, and managers react differently in different circumstances. So let's wait and see. Eh?
I have a confession to make, by the way. I recorded some stuff about 6 weeks ago about Scotland at the World Cup, and I made an impassioned speech about Scott McTominay and how this was going to be his moment, and how after everything that he's done in Italy, this was a chance for him to really impress on the stage. And he's the player that I'm most let down by, and I wonder if he's maybe not well or he's burnt out. He played a lot of games this season in a team that was ravaged by injury, carried a big weight for Napoli, and he just hasn't. He's covered the ground, by the way, when you look at his stats, but he hasn't delivered. In the last 20 minutes of the game the other day against Morocco, he turned up, but I'm disappointed. And we needed Scott McTominay. I really missed Billy Gilmore. I thought Billy Gilmore would have been...
Yeah.
I mean, I'll think about that for the rest of my days. I'll be an old man wondering what Billy Gilmore would have done at this World Cup, but that's football, isn't it?
Just to veer off a little bit, I was one thing that happened in the game, the goal that was disallowed, the one where there was a trip outside the box. I'm so impressed with the way that VAR has been used in this tournament, and I really think that PGMOL and all the Premier League officials should be looking at the way this tournament is going from a refereeing point of view and think, right, this shows us that VAR doesn't have to be a mess, doesn't have to be a force for bad, doesn't have to be a negative. It can work. You know, us three are not in favour of VAR, we know that, but it's here and it's staying. So what our responsibility now is to try and make it work. I think this tournament shows that it can work. And the reason that it's working is because the referees seem to be sticking to the principle of a high bar for intervention. So we are not seeing endless VAR stoppages. We're not seeing endless goal celebrations put on hold while men in a caravan analyse every single movement going back 2 minutes before the goal. What we're seeing is referees making decisions on the field and the VAR guys only getting involved when they feel it's necessary, which they obviously felt it was in the Brazil-Scotland game. I think they got that decision right. But it's a real It's a real tonic, I think. The only thing that's stopping games out here are the hydration breaks, which we know about and we've talked about. Apart from that, the games are flowing, and I really think that the English Premier League should look at this and think, right, this should be the way going forward. Do I find any dissenting voice in terms of that opinion from you two?
No, I actually think the refereeing has been outstanding in the Scotland games. You know, I'll be frustrated about those decisions, but actually, for the greater good and the bigger picture, I love the fact that the game has flowed better. And I was surprised when the Jack Henry thing got called back, because in the moment I thought, he's just been caught in possession there. That's another bit of shit defending. So I was quite pleased to see VAR intervene when I didn't expect it. I would have probably forgotten about that incident.
But that's where it should be used, because that when you look, I was watching the replay thinking, is that a foul? And I'm in a loud bar, and the commentary was, you could only occasionally hear the commentary. And I was looking out thinking, is that a foul? And then all of a sudden you see it's gone to VAR. Mark, I know we were talking about this before we came on air, but obviously your take on it is important.
Listen, it was interesting because I said to you before, I think Henry is one of them probably most honest, maybe an honest player, because when you watch defenders and you watch clever defenders, the minute they take that contact when they're in front and they're under pressure with the ball, they just go down. They felt the contact, they go down. There's nowhere in the world the referee's not going to give a free kick, because it's the safest decision to give, especially when a forward would be 1-on-1 with a goalkeeper. It's a foul. He does clip his legs. I'm not sure the VAR would have got involved if it was 6 passes before, and Scotland could have reset themselves defensively, because they wouldn't have analysed that decision to say that that decision had a major impact on the goal, because you can defend it. But the problem with this one is Henry can't defend it because that contact's knocked him off balance. People can argue saying it's soft, but because it has a huge impact that the defender can't defend the ball. I can understand why it was given. I said it in commentary, it's a foul, and the right decision was made. But if it happened against you, you'd be upset, of course. But
what about I think VAR generally?
I think VAR and I think, let's go, for me, VAR's secondary for me. Referees have to be at a high level and have to allow the game to flow and manage the games. And I feel that they've got this superbly well. I think the way they've managed their yellow cards, we haven't seen many double yellows to issue reds. We've seen more DOGSOs. That may be DOGSOs is denial and obvious goal scoring opportunity to other people. It's last man. That's maybe because of the pitches, and it's slowing the ball up, and people are making more mistakes when it's coming into the final third. There's been only 1 or 2 bad tackles. So in general, there's been a lot of fair play, which you do see in international football. You don't see that in domestic. Domestic football is a bit more physical than international, because players don't want to get sent off for the national team. So you do see a lot more respect. And I feel referees have really embraced how Collina wants the World Cup to be played. Collina's said in many interviews he wants the game to flow. He wants the football to be the centre stage and not refereeing. And I believe they've got that superbly well. And then what VAR have done is complemented that quality of refereeing and just stayed out till it's necessarily needed. And I agree with you, Ian. PGMOL can learn from it. But the problem in PGMOL isn't about VAR. It's the quality of referee as well, that the referees aren't at the level they used to be to make them quality decisions.
Do you think we got a bit of an insight there, Gordon, into the world of the referee? We got some referee slang there. DOGSO. A DOGSO.
Yeah,
denying
DOGSO.
of goal scoring opportunity.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Now we're getting under the skin of the referees. This is how they chat on the WhatsApp group. DOGSO.
Get out of it.
What about the DOGSO, lads?
Specialist material, that, isn't it? That's a dark corner of the internet I've not found yet. Just to draw a line under this, right? And this is my opinion on the Scotland situation, right? To qualify for a tournament where there are more teams involved than ever before is just takes a little bit of a gloss off it. To get to the tournament and perform as we have removes even more of a gloss. If we were to qualify and the odds are against us, and I'd look back on this in 20 years' time with my grandchildren and explain to them, we beat Haiti 1-0, we lost to Morocco and we got pumped by Brazil, and yet we got through the group stages. That's not a story to sit around the fire and tell your grandchildren. And I don't actually think we deserve to qualify on what we've done. And, I'd be slightly embarrassed, actually, to get past get through to the group stages after that, because we're not been good enough. It's simple as that. We haven't been good enough, and I think the manager needs to think about that. And I think the players need to work out why they're not turning up on the big occasion as well, when they can do it so well for their club sides. It's just really, really frustrating. And you look at the permutations of our chances of going through, and I'm consigned to the fact that we're out. I think South Africa have done us a dirty, and we need to pray for all sorts of ridiculous results elsewhere. I'll be supporting the Ivory Coast. Is it Ecuador and Curacao? I need them to lose quite heavily. I think you need Japan to lose as well. It's ridiculous now, and I don't want to be in that position ever as a football fan, relying on mathematics when everything's been stacked in your favour to qualify. It's embarrassing. So that's it. Line drawn under it. Not good enough.
And that's the flaw in the tournament. FIFA wanted this to be a bigger tournament, and they wanted it to be a more inclusive tournament. Fundamentally, they wanted it to be a tournament that made them more money, and this is what they've done by crowbarring this extra stage in the last 32. We have the situation where you will find teams who get through from the group who you could look on the face of it, you probably don't really deserve it, but that's the way that the tournament is. And I was the other thing that won't make you feel any better, Gordon, is that I don't even think that this is although they are easy on the eye, I don't think this is a great Brazilian side.
It's not.
I watched them play Morocco in game 1 at the MetLife in New Jersey, and they were very lucky not to lose that game. And I've watched both the subsequent games on television. Look, they've got some very, very good players. I mean, the way that Vinny Jr. was cool enough to send Angus Gunn the wrong way for the opening goal was, people think that's easy. That ain't easy. That's absolute calm under pressure. They've got some brilliant players. You've mentioned Cunha. We know who they are. But I don't think it's a great Brazilian team. I think they've got poor fullbacks. Casemiro can't run in this weather in midfield. And they've got other players who don't really want to run either. And you can throw this back at me later in the tournament. I'm sure you will. I think that Brazil team will lose to the first good team that they play. I really do. I don't think they'll. Scotland could have scored a couple of goals in the second half last night. Yeah. Easily could have scored a couple of goals. I think they will concede goals against good teams, and I think collectively they'll fall to pieces once that happens.
Great teams in tournaments seem to always start off slow and then get better and better and better and better. Brazil have definitely got something about him. I agree with what you say about Casemiro, but he's got so much he can put in. I thought Guimaraes, even though he's a Newcastle player, I'm going to stick up for him, of course. I thought he was fantastic energy-wise yesterday. There is some players that Brazil can. But you look at the tournament and you looked at Portugal, for example. They started off slow. They're starting to come. Germany have had had a bit of a bump against Ivory Coast. England have had a bump against Ghana. There's only been Argentina. Who else would you say, Ian, that has really stood out? But who cares about the group stage?
Germany,
the group stage means nothing to me.
Played well. But what's going to happen to Brazil now that Neymar is fit? Now that Neymar's fit, Neymar will expect to play. How's that going to play? How is that going to work out for Carlo Ancelotti going through this tournament?
Do you think he'll start, Ian?
Well, he'll expect to start. That's what I'll say. He'll expect to start.
This might be a controversial view after what you've both just said, but I think Brazil will go on really far in the tournament, and I'll tell you why. It's because Alisson, Gabriel and Marquinhos are phenomenal. I mean, I felt a little bit embarrassed last night watching Lawrence Shankland against those three, but we created chances, and I genuinely think the team that will win this World Cup will be the one that keeps it tight at the back. And there isn't a better three than those three in this tournament, in my opinion. And actually, I would like to see Brazil win it. I would love to see them win it. I think there's a personality and a likability about that team, apart from Neymar, which I've got a bit of faith in. Although Vinny Jr. was winding me up a little bit with the histrionics yesterday. But I think I'd like to see Brazil go all the way. And I think you might be surprised, Ian. I think there's a camaraderie in that team that might take them a bit further, and they'll warm up.
Won't be the first time I'm wrong on this podcast.
Okay. Just before we hear any more of Ian and Mark's takes, we're in partnership with Wix Trade Pro and tradespeople. Well, this one's for you.
That's right, because being a Wix Trade Pro member saves you money.
You can save 10% every time you shop in-store or online. No minimum spend, no hassle, just savings.
Unbelievable scenes.
And Wix don't just want to save you money, they want to save you time as well.
Picture it, you're halfway through a job and suddenly realise you've forgotten that you need an impact driver. But the job's almost finished. Normally that would be game over. But with Wix Rapid Delivery, what you need can be with you within 3 hours.
Blimey, that's what I call a last-minute winner.
Exactly. Get what you need from Wix Rapid Delivery within 3 hours. To sign up and start saving, just download the Wix Trade Pro app. You can do that today. Terms and conditions and charges and exclusions apply. Let's put my misery to the side, because I by the way, I am hurting about it. I'm really hurting about it, because I was really hoping to go to Mexico and meet England at one stage, but that dream's disappeared. And I think it's the loss of the fun ahead that's hurting more than anything. But England, Panama, and it's been really interesting to read in the Mail Michael Owen's thoughts, what Craig was saying about it the other day, that having a bumpy game and a sticky game happens in tournament football, but you do get the feeling that Thomas Tuchel needs to do something against Panama, Ian.
Charming, it's charming, that, Mark. I've written the whole back spread of the Mail today, and Gordon's picked out Michael Owen. That's kind of him. But yeah, I did read the Owen
so
column,
used to your brilliance.
and it's always interesting to see a player's perspective on it. And he was talking about, as you say, about how they won't be getting too down about the Ghana thing. Look, England are in a very good position. They've only ever won all 3 games in a group once in their history, and that was in 1982 in Spain. So that puts a bit of perspective on it. They should win the group. Let's see what happens in New Jersey in a couple of days. But I've seen some signs there that worry me. I said to Thomas Tuchel myself after the game on Tuesday, whenever it was, I said to him, why is it that I've just watched your team play a game in which you've had 80% of the ball and I've come away worrying about your defence, which I had. And obviously he didn't accept that, and he knocked that straight back at me. I think they've looked shaky. I think Pickford looks back to his emotional worst of 10 years ago. He needs to pull himself out of that. And the central defensive partnership, he's tried 2 now, don't look comfortable. He picked the wrong fullback against Ghana. I presume he'll pick Nico O'Reilly again, and I don't think we'll see much more of Jed Spence. But I just think across the back, for some reason, they look nervy. And they look nervy against Croatia, and were exposed against Croatia in the first half. And they look nervy against Ghana. Ghana should have had a penalty. I know Mark's not sure that he agrees. I think Ghana should have had a penalty, the Konsa tackle. Pickford came scrambling out of his box to knock 7 bells out of that lad earlier on, and somehow got the free kick in his favour. Every time Ghana came forward, England looked vulnerable. And this is a team that didn't concede a goal in qualifying. So something is not quite right there. And that probably won't kill them against Panama, but it will kill them further along in the tournament if they don't sort it out.
There's something interesting going on here, isn't there, with the players he's brought in? Because Livramento hasn't got a like-for-like replacement. And I think you're right, Ian, it's more about England's defence. I think Pickford looks like he's struggling with his concentration. And then who is your natural right-back? Jed Spence certainly isn't the answer from what you said the other day and what you've written in the paper. So it feels to me like Tuchel's still sort of fiddling around a bit, trying to find these settled back 4, which doesn't seem like a team that are going to go all the distance, Ian.
I think his back 4 now has to be Reece James and O'Reilly as the fullbacks, and Konsa and Gay as the central defenders. And he certainly won't change his goalkeeper. And he shouldn't change his goalkeeper. Pickford has proved himself over years. He is our best goalkeeper. He's a fine goalkeeper. He's just started the tournament in a slightly peculiar way. So I think that will be his back 4. We know who the middle 2 are, and obviously we know Harry Kane will play. So he's got choices out wide. And, Mark's former favourite player, and before he moved to Barcelona, Anthony Gordon, I think is probably on the 2 strikes and you're out territory now. And I would like to see Bukayo Saka on the other side if he's fit. And I think that should be the England team, with Rashford one side, Saka on the other, and away we go. But there's some injury problems. Rice has got a hamstring problem.
Yeah.
That wouldn't worry me too much if Kobbie Mainoo had to come and play in there. Or if you even put Jude back there and put Morgan Rogers into the 10, that wouldn't worry me at all. I'm not too worried about that. But I think Saka is still 50-50. Rashford's carrying something as well. So there's a few aches and pains, but they've got to play better. They were really poor the other night. I know other journalists don't agree with me. They were really, really poor. They've got to be better than that.
Mark, see, as a Scotland fan looking at the England team, I cannot understand why Saka, Rashford and Kane isn't the starting 3. I think it's so obvious that they're the most potent and dangerous three players up front. How would you start against Panama?
Yeah, I think he's trying to balance his squad around because of injuries and knocks, and I think I agree with Ian. Gordon's had his chances. I think the way the reaction with Gordon, certainly second half, and Tuchel's shouting and screaming at him doesn't look good for him. So I think Gordon will probably be out of the team if Rashford is fit. I think they've got so many players to come in. And listen, I would agree with Ian. Saka on one side, Rashford on the other, Bellingham, and I would probably pick maybe Menu instead of Rice. Give Rice a rest, and hopefully Rice. Because for me, are we that bothered about the group stages? Everybody expects me to win the group. I think we'll go and beat Panama. We should beat Panama. We'll win the group. That's what we're expected to do. But that's not the end. You can win the group and have 10 goals and none conceded. Win the group and then get beaten round 32 and you go home. Everybody remembers you get beat on 32. So for me, it's not really, the tournament doesn't really start to England till they get out the groups and they start the knockouts, because you play one bad game. Like, for example, we played against Ghana and the referee decides to give a penalty, you're out the tournament. So, one mistake defensively when we could be out. So these are the small details that happens in the knockout stages. You can't afford to have a bad game.
I tell you what I do love about this World Cup so far is that all the big dogs are barking, aren't they?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Brilliant.
I left a little video message from my daughter yesterday saying, Messi 5, Vinny Jr. 4,
Haaland.
Mbappe as my daughter pronounces it. Mbappe 4. Mbappe 4. Haaland 4. It's just amazing that they're all scoring goals already. Vinny Jr. 4. It's brilliant.
There's something
because
in
that's
that.
what you want from a World Cup. You want your big stars to write their name
100%.
over a tournament. And it's fabulous that that's happened so far.
But it's never, in past tournaments, Ian, you're right, in past tournaments I haven't seen all the superstars, or many of the superstars turn up. Normally the superstars are burnt out and really don't get to them levels. But what I find in this tournament is, and I think it started off with Messi. Once Messi got that hat-trick, it was like, and the way the games have panned out, France have to follow. Like your daughter says, Mbappe, or like he goes on and creates. Then Haaland must look thinking, wait, I'm going to do it. So Haaland does it. And then Kane does it. And it's just one after, and Vinicius Jr. does it. Everybody seems to be doing it. And then Ronaldo's thinking, well, I didn't have the best of games. I'm going to have to try and he steps up. And what I'm loving it seems to be they're all trying to beat each other. And it's just creating this wonderful spectacle. And I think that's what's helped make this World Cup so good so far, that the big players and all of them are turning up.
I think part of it is due to the expanded format. So the quality of the teams in the groups has been diluted. So I think there's a few free hits. But I tell you what, Norway versus France back in Boston, Friday, I'm not going to it, Friday night, that already feels like a shootout, doesn't it, between Mbappe and Haaland. And by the way, the English are going to get English weather again in New York on Saturday. Can you believe it?
Jammy.
So it peed it down in Boston, obviously, on Tuesday. I'm sitting here in New Jersey. You might be able to see the sunshine behind me. That weather's going to break over the weekend. It's going to rain all Saturday. So England have got to get it in their favour again. It's going to be like playing in Birmingham again this weekend.
To finish the podcast off today, I'll give you a wee bit of modern art history if you're interested, boys. I'm going to bore you to tears here. But one of the most famous, I think, iconic sports photographs of all time was taken by David Yarrow, the Scottish photographer at the Azteca in 1986. And it was an accident, right? He had the wrong lens on his camera, and he got the picture of Maradona on the shoulders holding the World Cup in his right hand and the hand of God pointing up. And actually, if you look at the picture closely, it's just incredible because his fingers, the hand of God, is touching the saltire, the Scottish flag. Picture taken by a Scottish guy. It's an amazing bit of history. It's an incredible picture. But David Yarrow did a picture for the Norway team. I don't know if you've seen it, called Vikings. And it's all the players lined up, decked out properly as Vikings, sat in amongst the Norwegian fjords with the mountains around them. It is an incredible, incredible picture.
That thing that they did with the drumming was amazing on the field.
Yeah.
You pull
brilliant.
You pull it all in together, and what's happened in the 1998? Do you remember the Brazil NICAD when they're playing football in the World Cup?
Yes, of course.
I remember as an 18-year-old boy getting so excited about seeing Brazil and Ronaldo and Ronaldinho and all these boys playing, Cafu, and they delivered. And what's interesting, as you mentioned, Ian, for young fans watching the game, all of those big names who've been built up by huge marketing campaigns, there's a lot of money invested in that, and they have all delivered so far. And, if this is the beginning of the tournament.
What ages me is when you see, say, when Brazil are playing, and the cameras always pan to the VIP seats, don't they? And you got Roberto Carlos sitting there. You got Rivaldo sitting there. And they all look about 90 years old. I covered that Brazil. They were both playing in the first Brazil team. I covered it at World Cup in Japan in 2002. I was at that game, I think, against Turkey when Rivaldo got a ball to the midriff and went down holding his face by the corner flag. I was at that game, and they're sitting there now looking like really, really old men. That was the first Brazil team I ever watched live. There we go.
Absolutely brilliant.
I think I've aged better.
Yeah, and just to finish on a statistic, Scotland.
I haven't had the sun damage.
Yeah, Scotland have played Brazil 10 times in 50 years and never won. So there's another optimistic figure for you. Right, boys, that's us. Where are you next, Ian? Where are you on your trip? Are you back in New Jersey?
So we're doing this recording on Thursday morning. I'm off to MetLife this afternoon to watch Germany versus Ecuador, which is a bit of a dead rubber, but it's my job, hard life. I'll go anyway. And then I'm hanging around here until England come to play in the rain on Saturday evening.
Tremendous. And Mark, are you settled now into Los Angeles lifestyle?
Yeah, I'm settled, sleeping well. 3 games today. So yeah, enjoying it. I'm loving it. So
you look a bit weary, Mark. I never ever say this of you. You look a little bit jaded today.
Because I'm up at ridiculous o'clock to support you guys on this wonderful podcast. Yeah,
thanks, 6 o'clock in the morning where you are.
Yeah. Thanks. I was up at 5. Yeah.
Feel free to do it in your pajamas next time.
I have. I've got my pajama bottoms on.
Do you get PGMOL issue pajamas with DOGSO written on the back?
Pajama well is called. Right, boys.
No comment.
Tremendous to see you both. Safe travels, Ian Ladyman. Mark Clattenburg will catch up again really soon. Please send us some more questions, whistleblowers@dailymail.com. All that remains is for Mark to do the business. Blow the full-time whistle, please. Thank you very much for watching Whistleblowers. Remember, there are new episodes every Thursday and Tuesday, so don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for even more content. And follow us wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode.